An art exhibition brings together artists from both sides of the Mississippi to address the issue of social justice. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. The Jacoby Arts Center in Alton, Illinois, has an exhibition, Social Justice, Both Sides of the River, which features work of both St. Louis and Illinois artists, as well as performances, film screenings, and discussions. Later, we're going to learn more about what the Jacoby is doing and why they're doing it. We begin, though, with two of the artists who are featured in this event. Please welcome Solomon Thurman Jr. and Darnell Malone. Welcome, gentlemen, to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Social Justice, Both Sides of the River is bringing together artists, as I said, Illinois artists and St. Louis artists. And is that unusual in any way? What does that mean to you, Darnell?
Well, I think it forms unity. Everybody come together for the same cause, and you get a chance to see each other's work and see how they're expressed and how they feel.
I've heard that maybe that there's not a long history of that happening. Artists from both sides working together for whatever reason.
Well, this is the first time that I've been in it, as far as them coming together. But
Solomon?
I don't know, artists from east, or at least the Illinois side of the river and also the Missouri side of the river, sort of work together as independents and not necessarily in an organized form. So this is something new and unique.
And Solomon, you reside in St. Louis.
I do.
Right? And Darnell, you're in Edwardsville, Illinois.
yes,
Tell me a little bit about your work, Darnell, your artistic work. What's your
pieces.
style? What do you do?
well, my style sometimes is mostly abstract expressionism, but for this exhibit, you have the pieces are definitely abstract expressionism, even though it's based on racial injustice, racial discrimination, and no matter what you may go through in life, surviving and rising from it, which is why one piece is titled Survive and Rise.
Solomon, your work?
My work, I like to focus on what I call stylized realism, at least my interpretation of what realism means. And what I try to do is interpret that in such a way where I bring in my training as an artist and then also depict subject matter that sort of reflects my lifestyle as well as the lifestyle of my ancestors.
When you talk about subject matter, as an artist, what does it mean to you to be involved in a certain exhibition, you know, with a theme? This one has a theme. Is it important for you to identify with that theme and feel strongly about it, to be part of it?
Well, the two paintings that I put on the exhibit, I felt like they did fit with the theme, and I was glad that I still had those two pieces. And based on how the art patrons and the viewers were responding, it was definitely the right two pieces to put on the exhibit.
Okay, when I was asked to create some work, and given the material that I was able to use, I created original pieces for this exhibition. And what I tried to put into it was my life experiences in one, and then one is called Sanctuary. This is the interior of a church that I consider a place where it reflects the history of the United States and also the history of African Americans in particular.
So how important is this theme to you right now? You know, this has been in the works for, I don't know when they would have started planning this, a year ago, I don't know.
Right.
But think of all the things that have happened in the last 2 months. There have been several police shootings and a bunch of stories. It almost, it really brings home sort of the theme of this exhibition. The timing is interesting.
Right, the timing was impeccable. Yeah. And it was interesting. I already had the pieces selected what I was going to go with. Survive and Rise is a perfect example of no matter what an individual or ethnic group may go through, you have to survive and rise from it. Colors Don't Clash, People Do. Number 3 is just a reminder that this type of behavior or these type of incidents, they date way back.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, on my view, I believe that the history of our culture is reflected somewhat constantly, and what's happened in the last week or so has become more pronounced mainly because of social media, but it's something that's been going on all the time. I think only the victims' names have changed, and the situations are somewhat similar. You can go back in time and sort of see comparisons.
And how do you feel about the role of art in addressing social issues of any kind?
Art speaks volumes, and then you got a lot of different people viewing it. Certain pieces they're going to see the message right away. Some pieces they're going to interpret it to what that piece means to them. But yet still, the artwork is still speaking volumes.
And I think artwork sort of speaks to two different individuals. One individual would be part of the general public. The other individuals would be trained individuals who see beyond what's being said. So I think that's really the goal of the artist, is to try to bring in all their training and all their interests and then sort of interpret it into one or two images.
We want to share some of your artwork, and I don't think all these pieces are in this particular exhibition, but these are your work. And Darnell, we want to start with you. So tell me what we're seeing here.
Well, that one there is Colors Don't Clash People Do, number 3. I wanted to bring
I
up
want you to repeat that again, because I really like colors don't clash, people
do. Right, and that's why I put the colors on the left side. They're not clashing. The right side stems from people who did clash, or with people who clash with blacks. And I wanted to go back as far as I could. I started with the Little Rock Nine. You've got Rosa Parks. Viola Davis was the only white woman to die during the Civil Rights Movement. And she was the one who actually said, we're going to change the world. Then you go all the way down to Dr. King, where it says, I have a dream.
You mentioned Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm guessing that all those people you just mentioned, there's some conscious memory that you have when you were a younger kid about this.
I just happened to be watching a TV show on the Learning Channel, and they mentioned Rosa Parks. And then they stated the role she played in the Civil Rights Movement. The women who were talking about her said she was like a sister to them. And then I just wrote her name down. I said, I'm never going to forget it. And then when I got ready to produce that piece, I went online and got all the information about her I could, and then I put her in the piece.
It's a great piece. Let's go to the next one. And Solomon, this is your work.
Oh, yeah, that's, I forgot what I even called this, but,
Well,
but
what does it mean,
depicts,
though?
what is it? It depicts a visual image of social protest, and what they're doing is they're holding up numbers as signs, and those numbers are being interpreted by written script that's underneath or to the side of each one of those signs. And those signs basically are statements about history in general. If you look at one in particular, it says "write daily," you know, so why would someone be protesting about that? They're not really protesting. What they're doing is making social statements about it. The other thing about this image is that each one of those faces that you see have the words L-O-V-E as expressions of the eyes, nose, and mouth. So the L and O are the eyes, and the V is the nose, and then the E is the mouth part of it, and every figure in there has that image, and some of it is reversed.
Why does that one face stick out in the front there?
That one face is a white person, and then that statement of number 2 means that only a white man can play the part of a white man. Oh, no, it goes like this, that no one can play the part of a white man better than a white man. So that's really what's being said there. And the statement really sort of reflects back to the Native Americans and how they tried to assimilate, and then they weren't able to because of a lot of other instances. History sort of tells the story of those experiences.
Let's take a look at another piece of work from Darnell.
Okay, that's Survive and Rise. And everything that's happening at the bottom, it could be anything from injustice, racial discrimination. It could be different areas of oppression. But if you survive it, you can rise from it. Solomon is next.
Yes, okay, let me see, what's up? Oh, this is called Sanctuary, in which I speak of the interior of a church. This church I go to, which is Greater Learned Missionary Baptist Church on 11th and Benson. And what I do as part of my religious experience is to draw what's happening in front of me. So this is a culmination of all those sketches, perhaps 100 or so sketches.
We have another from Darnell.
Okay, that one's on exhibit at WashU. That one was on loan. That one's stacked up and they're still outweighed. No matter what stacks up against you, you can outweigh it based on your faith and based on what you believe. And it totally defied the law of physics.
And we'll go to Solomon again.
Okay, what's happening here? Oh, this is called Living the Blues, and this comes from a photograph, a black and white photograph taken by my son, who also modeled for this picture. And it talks about a blues man living the life of a nomadic blues man, just sort of traveling around and playing the blues music.
Let's look at one more from each of you. We'll go to Darnell.
Okay, that one right there is what causes chaos. And I already knew what I wanted to do. I knew what was causing that emotion. And when I produced the piece, I wanted to include all the colors that I could. And that one there is owned by SIU Edwardsville.
And one more from Solomon.
Oh, wow, that's a highway scene. You know, actually, I'm coming back from Chicago, and that's the view that I saw. I take a lot of photographs from my car because of the skies that I see and all the colors that come from skies. So as a result, I have done a series of highway pictures that I call it. This is actually a photograph, or at least a painting that was on at the Sheldon. I had a one-man show, a retrospective of 40 years of art at the Sheldon, and that's one of the images from that.
I love both your work.
Thank you.
And Darnell, I know that you prefer the environment of a classroom as an artist, don't you?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I like teaching. And I feel like it's more purpose-driven. And then I can share what I know with the students and teach them about art, and then have them, hopefully they'll acquire the same passion that I have.
And you have something called Company Excelsior?
Yeah, that was a business I started in 1998. It was based on a client asked me if I would come to their house and consult. And then they asked me if I would actually do the paint job. So I did a full finish, and I started it then.
And Solomon, I think you're involved in the art gallery with your wife, Pat?
Yes, my wife, Pat, and I own 10th Street Gallery on 419 North 10th Street, and we've been there for 5 years. And what we do is we show the artwork of individuals from not only St. Louis, but also regionally, and also artists that we've known.
Well, some of work from both you gentlemen is featured right now at the Jacoby Arts Center in Alton as part of their social justice, both sides of the river exhibition. But before we take our break and come back with more of that, speaking of social justice, there's such a fascinating connection with you, Solomon, and you are the third cousin of Emmett Till.
True.
And it was on a date in 1955 that lives in history.
Yes, it does. And everyone sort of knows that story, but they don't know the story of the impact of the family as a result of what happened.
Emmett Till was a victim of mob action, or
well,
how would you put it?
Actually, he was a victim of being a human being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he didn't know the social mores of the South and how violent it was as a result of his interaction working with, or at least sort of interacting with the white race, basically, that's it. And as a result of what happened to Emmett, that my family would not allow the ones who were not trained enough to go down into Mississippi. We had to visit all our relatives from Mississippi who came through going up to Chicago. So that was my experiences. I wasn't an adult before I would go down there and feel comfortable enough to take my own children down there and feel like I would be safe.
Well, Solomon, Darnell, thank you both for being here today and helping to facilitate the dialogue. That's
great.
Pretty important, I think, for everybody to do.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Steve.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more of what's happening at the Jacoby Arts Center right after this.
Kids will spend 15 minutes watching online videos like this one.
Brushing for 2 minutes now can save your child from severe tooth pain later. 2 minutes twice a day. They have the time.
Experience St. Louis.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. Social Justice, Both Sides of the River is an art exhibition that's currently up at the Jacoby Arts Center in Alton until August the 6th. We're going to talk about it now more. And by the way, it does feature artists from both Missouri and Illinois. I'd like to introduce you to my guests right now. To my far right is Erin Mcmullen. She's the Executive Director of the Jacoby Arts Center. And also here is Frida L. Wheaton. She's a St. Louis-based arts advocate and has curated Visualizing Life and Social Justice in Real Time, which is now up at the Jacoby. Welcome to you both.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Let's start, Erin, with you. Social justice is a term, you know, we hear a lot talked about these days. What does it mean to you?
Gosh, that's a really broad question,
Yeah,
Steve.
sorry about that.
Well, specifically with this show, we're focusing on racial justice and racial inequality and how to move past that. So a lot of the work in this exhibit gives a nod to the history of inequality in our country and how that is continually experienced and today in our present culture.
Frida, you have a comment on that?
Well, I agree with Erin, certainly. And I also think it goes beyond what we might commonly consider social justice in today's time, with recent police killings of black men in particular. It includes housing, redlining, banking discrimination, and any kind of disparity, negative disparity that blacks in particular might experience, but other people of color as well.
So, Erin, this month-long event at the Jacoby is comprised of a lot of different elements.
Yeah. So we've got the art on the wall, but then we also have several music and film events that are going to be happening throughout the...
Let's maybe just, before we talk more specifically, let's talk a little bit about the Jacoby Arts Center in particular. It's located in downtown Alton.
Yes.
It's relatively new, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, maybe?
Well, actually, it's
older than
it's older than that. It's been around since 2004, but it's mostly the main feature is the art gallery. But we host different performing arts groups. We've got artist studios down in the basement that we rent out, and we host classes, visual arts classes there as well. And we're also a satellite location for the folk school of KDHX.
What does that mean?
They offer their folk school classes at Jacoby.
And there we have a shot of interior gallery space with the exhibition that's currently there. And Frida, talk about your contribution, because what you have brought to the Jacoby is something that you've had elsewhere.
Yes, and in fact, I do have the catalog for Visualizing Life, Social Justice in Real Time. This is a catalog that shows all of the artwork that has now been moved to the Jacoby from my curatorial input. It was done initially at the request of Dance St. Louis, and it was amazing being asked to curate for a dance performance. That was in February. Following the 2-day presentation at the Two Hill Performing Arts Center, I moved it to Vaughn Cultural Center, where I am director and curator. In June, I moved it to the Jacoby because there was a real desire to keep the social justice dialogue continuing.
Erin, I want to talk to you about that. And first, I want to thank my friend Penny Schmidt for helping put all this together. She did a lot of the legwork for me on this program, and I appreciate that. But she's involved with the Jacoby, and she was involved in sort of the original idea for this, wasn't she?
Oh yeah, Penny and a friend of hers went to the Dance St. Louis performance at the Two Hills, saw the exhibit there, and thought this would be great at Jacoby. And a good friend of Penny and myself, Sun Smith Foray, she's a local artist in Alton. She has worked with Frida on a collaborative project called Riverwork, where she has involved many local artists, but also artists from all over the country to contribute to I guess it's over 300 feet long now,
Yes.
a textile that speaks to the river, specifically the Mississippi, but really anything. So Sun was, and Sun and Frida actually go way back. Frida, you can probably chime in there.
And you're involved in, you do textile art yourself, don't you?
Well, actually, this was my first ever textile piece.
Oh.
Sun has a way of encouraging new artists in different areas, but I'm very proud of the work I did, which was all hand-stitched, unlike most of the artists, I think. And my piece that I did for river work is also in social justice, both sides of the river, and it is titled Mississippi, Cotton, Commerce, and Human Cargo, because it was a conduit for each of those things.
Well, what did you think when someone approached you about bringing your work over to the Illinois side?
Oh, I thought it was great. And one thing is, the artist spent so much time on these pieces. Most of them are 6 feet by 4 feet. There are some that are 3.5 feet by 8 feet. They worked months on the overall project, and I'm glad to see it continue to live in Illinois.
I'm going to talk specifically about some of the artists whose work we'll see there in a moment. But Aaron, maybe just a little bit on some of the other elements. There are going to be screenings of films that relate to this topic, discussions, other elements. What sticks out to you?
Well, I'm most excited about both of the films that we're screening. This Friday, we're going to be screening Denise Ward Brown's documentary, From Jim Crow to Barack Obama, which is a film that interviews today's youth and the elders that lived through the Jim Crow experience. And it's really just an eye-opening film that documents these conversations between two different generations.
Have you seen that, Frida?
I have seen it. It's fantastic.
Well, how does it strike you?
Oh, it strikes me as very relevant and a film that will live well beyond the time.
And then there's a little film, A Four-Way Stop.
Which you're very familiar with,
I'm very familiar with because I have a very small part in it. It was shot in St. Louis by Effie De Silva, who was at one time did some work here years before that, but she's based in New York now. And you're going to screen that on July 29th.
That's right.
And that's a story of a young man growing up in sort of a poor urban environment who's trying to create a better life, and about the obstacles that he runs into socially and culturally and trying to get a job. And I'm going to moderate, in fact, a discussion after that film on the 29th with Ben Ghali, who's a former head of the Alton Human Relations Commission, and with Marty Casey, who has a large role in the film, who plays the part of the young man's mother.
Yeah.
Right. And do you know what you want to accomplish with all of this when the month's over?
Well, my main incentive is to create conversation, the opportunity for dialogue. Something that we are fortunate to be able to offer thanks to Sun's involvement in this project. She is offering guided tours at the gallery every Saturday at 2 p.m. And initially we weren't sure what to expect for the turnout, but this past Saturday, the first tour, we had 20 people there. And there was a lot of really important conversation that happened as an outcome of that.
That's when I dropped by, wasn't it? I just happened to
yeah.
drop by that day, and it was interesting. I was watching the people interact and talk and look at the artwork.
Yeah, it's been really well received by the Alton community, and it couldn't, like you alluded to this with Darnell and Solomon, it couldn't have come at a better time, you know. Unfortunately, like Solomon said, these instances are happening over and over and over again, but the media is really focusing on it right now, and I think a lot of people just need some space to talk about.
I don't know how to
things.
ask that exactly, but did it ever seem risky to do this? When I say risky, maybe that's the wrong word. Just that, I don't know, maybe people will get upset. Maybe we'll have arguments in the gallery. You know where I'm going with that.
I do, and you know, I'm kind of new to holding a more public position. My first time being a director of a small nonprofit. So it's something that I thought about, you know, what kind of role do I have here and what's my responsibility to Jacoby and to the community, but also to myself. And I've been an activist and been very involved in these issues for several years. And I feel like, yeah, okay, it's a minimal risk. People may feel uncomfortable, but It's the very least that we can do. It's a risk that's necessary to
Sometimes
take.
that's how you grow, isn't it? To
Oh,
make yourself a little
absolutely.
uncomfortable and address things that you're not sure about.
Yeah.
Frida, talk about the work that we'll see at the Jacoby that you've brought there.
Well,
Maybe mention some of the artists and what they do.
Sure, absolutely. You've already seen the work of Solomon Thurman, both his pieces that are in the show. And there are 16 artists total. I call them the Sweet 16 because they did just a fantastic job in creating. We have two.
So the work was created specifically for this?
It was created specifically for visualizing life,
Right.
social justice in real time. That was curated at the behest of, at the request, and maybe the behest of Michael Utoff, who was director and creative executive at Dance St. Louis. So when I identified the artists I wanted to participate, most of them actually had participated in Hands Up, Don't Shoot, Artists Respond, which over 100 artists participated in following the death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. And that is one reason actually that I chose the cover of the catalog, which you saw earlier, to be artwork by Howard Berry, a very prolific artist who has done a lot of social justice art, focusing on Ferguson and other areas. And that is the cover of Visualizing Life. And I'm very pleased that audiences at the Jacoby have had an opportunity to receive that catalog and to go through it. But we have two artists who did three-dimensional work, Ishmima Nepkata and Gundia Lak Clay. Their work is superb. Gundia's two pieces are boys, young boys who would have been participant perhaps on the streets of Ferguson back in August and September of 2014. They're each wearing gas masks and dressed accordingly like teenagers and young boys would.
Mm-hmm. And we're just about out of time, but there's a wonderful work by an artist that did portraits of young people that were killed by gun violence.
Yes, actually that curated show is Christine Ileski's project, which is Faces Not Forgotten. Faces Not Forgotten is really heartbreaking because it does depict those youth, and it's very exciting to see and very sentimental.
Well, I encourage people to check out the website for the Jacoby Arts Center in Alton. This will be up until August the 6th, and try to join me on July 29th for a screening of Four-Way Stop and the discussion afterwards. Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention and sharing it with our audience today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for City Corner. I'm Steve Potter. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.